Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our CPA Firm Partners Best Practices in Finding Staff in 2021 webinar. I'm joined by Marc Belaiche, who is a CPA and CA and president of TorontoJobs.ca. So just wanted to say welcome to Marc, first of all, before we get into things. And thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, Marc's the president of TorontoJobs.ca. He's going to share his thoughts on what it takes to find staff for public accounting firms in this market. He has over 25 years of experience in recruiting, and he's specialized, I think, most of your career, Marc, in accounting and financial professionals. So no better person to speak to this topic than Marc, that's for sure. As long as I've been working with Marc 15 years, he has a very intense knowledge of recruiting staff in firms, and I'm really excited about the content you're going to share today, and we really appreciate you taking the time to prepare. I know it's a lot to prepare these presentations. So Marc's going to discuss the state of the labor market. He's going to talk about projections for 2021 employment and hiring. I think you're going to cover a little bit about working from home, your famous K-shaped recovery, and his 10 best practices for recruiting and hiring staff. So we're going to cover a lot today. Marc's going to go through a lot of different information and points, and he's our research guru. So Marc has a lot of information about what's happening in the market and stats and trends. So I think you're going to start off by walking us through those trends, Marc, which is always interesting to know and break it down by sector and province and talk about the unemployment rate. Very interesting data, obviously, since the pandemic. Things have been very up and down and very unpredictable almost in the employment industry. So it's very interesting to walk through all the information that you put together. So really looking forward to that. I want to go through just a couple things before I pass it over to Marc. So if you do have any questions at any point throughout the webinar today, we're just asking that you use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So that will allow you to type in your question. I'll be monitoring those questions throughout the course of the hour that we're going to be together today. We're going to save the last 10 or 15 minutes for questions. So I'll come back on the screen and I'll facilitate those questions. If there's anything that I can answer behind the scenes, I'll do that as well, but I will save most of the questions for Marc to answer live, just so everyone can have that benefit. So again, the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen will allow you to ask any questions that you have, and please feel free to put them in that box at any time throughout the presentation. We'll just be answering them at the end. In terms of any other technical things, I think that's about it. The chat will be disabled. However, I will be using the chat throughout the course of the presentation. I'm just going to update some information that Marc's speaking about. I'll put some links in there just so you can join us on our social media channels. We have a lot of upcoming events that I'm going to talk about in a minute as well. So I'm going to put the links in there for those events. So I'll be using the chat pretty actively just so that you guys have all the information and links easily accessible to anything that we're talking about today. I just wanted to also take a minute to talk about TorontoJobs.ca. We are hosting the event today. We have been in recruiting and the employment industry for just over 15 years, helping people and clients find staff. And I mentioned, we specialize in accounting and financial positions. So again, about 15 years we've been doing recruitment, and we've helped some amazing organizations and clients in terms of sourcing candidates, and we have a very large pool of awesome candidates that we have been in contact with for many years. So if you're looking to fill a position, we have that service available. And then we also have online services, and I mentioned events that we do. We used to do them live. However, obviously with the pandemic, we switched to doing virtual events, which I think has gone over pretty well. I was a little nervous at first with pivoting. I'm sure you guys have had to pivot a lot in your business as well. So we completely changed to virtual, and we've been doing some really awesome events in the areas of accounting. So just wanted to note those just before Marc gets started. So May 28th, we have a Canadian virtual tax conference. June 9th, we have a Canadian virtual CPA PD day. June 15th, we have a CPA Firm Partners Conference. And on June 22nd, we have our Canadian Virtual Controllers Conference. And these events are not just, kind of what we're doing today, a Zoom webinar. They're really interactive. So you have the ability to network with other attendees. So as an example, if you're at the CPA Firm Partners Conference. We have a networking time period where you can meet other firm owners, have conversation. It is video based, so you somewhat feel like you're live making connections. And then we run a series of sessions. So we bring in industry leading speakers who will talk about a variety of topics pertaining to, if it's a tax conference or if it's a CPA Firm Partners event. We have 3 or 4 different sessions that we'll run throughout the course of that. And then we have a panel, which the panel will bring in some experts and have just dialogue and conversation about what's happening in the industry. So it's an amazing 2 hour, they're 2 hours. So, you know, not a huge time commitment, and a lot of information and connections to take away from those events. So yeah, in terms of services, that's what we offer. I'm going to pass it over to Marc so he can get into his presentation. He's going to probably go through a little bit more about what we do. And again, I'm going to put some links in the chat as well. Again, for anyone that's just joining us, if you have any questions, please place those in the bottom of your screen there. It just says Q&A at the very bottom. So if you have any questions, just place them in the Q&A box and we will be happy to answer them. And I'll be back once Marc says it's time for questions. So we'll do some concluding remarks and I'll help out with the questions. And I just wanted to thank everyone for being here. I know it's really nice weather and we've been trapped inside. So we really appreciate your time, you know, being here on this nice Thursday afternoon before the long weekend. So I'll pass it over to you, Marc, if that's okay.
Yes, very much. Yeah, thanks very much, Rachel. Great job in getting this set up and coordinated and so on. So I appreciate everything you're doing. Great stuff.
Absolutely. So, all right, I'll be back towards the end.
Excellent. So welcome. Thanks everybody for being here. We're going to cover lots, as Rachel had mentioned. We're going to be talking about the state of the labor market. I think it's good for you to kind of know what's going on in the labor market in general, one of my favorite topics. And then we'll talk my top 10 tips, best practices for CPA firms to find staff in today's world. And then wrap up with questions, as Rachel mentioned. So a little bit more about myself to give you some context. I am a CPA CA. I did my articling with KPMG in Toronto from 1988 to 1992. Went to Prudential Insurance in Scarborough, Ontario for 3 years, from 92 to 95. And then since 95, I got into recruiting. And it's been very interesting. In fact, I think back to the early days, and back then it was very, very rare for CPA firms to use recruiters to find staff. There usually were enough students that were coming through the motions, through the process, and it wasn't that challenging to find people. And then over time, really maybe since 2008, 2009, 2010, when the financial credit crisis hit, and then the amalgamation of the designation started happening, it just seemed that there was a change in terms of firms using recruiters and being more open to using recruiters to help them find staff, because it became more and more challenging. So all in all, that has changed the landscape for recruiting for CPA firms in terms of finding staff and finding good staff too. So as you're probably aware, because you're on this webinar right now. So as Rachel mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to answer them as time goes on as well. So I'll start for the next 20 minutes or so. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of what's going on in the Canadian labor market, just overall, and then I'll spend the next 20 minutes after that talking about what you can do as a CPA firm, or as a CPA firm to find the right candidates, what's happening out there, what's going on in the market, and how I might be able to help as well. So let's talk big picture, Canada, across the board. So immigration has been a key component of government and ways to increase population in Canada. Now, of course, the pandemic has really put a kibosh on a lot of people coming in from other countries, but Canada's aim has been to bring in 1.2 million immigrants over a 3-year period, being 2021, 2022, and 2023. In fact, Immigration Minister Marco Mendicino said the plan basically seeks to fill workplace shortages and boost Canada's economy. So basically the gist of it is that Canada needs more workers, and immigration is the way of getting there, according to the minister. And that Canadians know that newcomers are playing a role in stepping up to fill some of our most acute labor shortages. And there's a refugee and immigration policy researcher at the University of Calgary who said that if the government meets its goals, the next 3 years will be the highest years on record in Canada immigration since 1911. Now, just to paint the picture of what the 400,000 are, about 230,000 newcomers are from the economic class of immigrants, 100,000 from family members of people already in Canada, 60,000 refugees and other protected people, and another 6,000 will be accepted on humanitarian grounds. Now, even with the country closing its borders, we're still getting newcomers that are coming in to Canada. So we're still getting that, but the immigration levels remain significantly lower than planned because of the pandemic. Before the pandemic, Canada was having 25 to 35,000 new immigrants a month. Now, across the board, Statistics Canada puts out job numbers once a month, and you might hear it, especially when it's really, really good or really, really bad, on the first Friday of the month. And you'll see it on the evening news or whatever it is. So if it's really, really good or really, really bad. Now, what's been happening, we went in January and February of 2020, we had the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded in Canadian history in 40 or 50 years that they've been keeping track. We were at 5.5%. The unemployment rate hit the highest unemployment rate ever recorded in Canadian history in May. After the pandemic, we lost 3 million jobs. We got up to over 13%. Now, through the course of June last year to November, we actually had really, really great positive job creation. December, January, we hit a bit of a snag. We lost about 200,000 jobs. February kind of came back. We regained about the same number of jobs. And as we come across in April, which is not much of a surprise because March 2021 was a good month. In April 2021, last month, we lost 207,000 jobs. The unemployment rate is 8.1%, and we lost 130,000 full-time jobs and 78,000 part-time jobs. Now, the number of Canadians working from home actually grew by 100,000. So we now have 5.1 million people across Canada working from home. And some of the other stats, the number of Canadians unemployed for 27 weeks or more is about 500,000 right now. And employment in Ontario took the biggest hit. 150,000 of the 200,000 jobs in April were lost in Ontario. Not much of a surprise because we had the stay-at-home orders, and that's what happened in January where we lost a number of jobs. Now, I can tell you from a recruiting perspective, it's actually been pretty good, and it's been a challenge to find people actually, and I'm going to talk about that as well when it comes to the CPA firms as well. Across Canada, 1.6 million people are unemployed, 18.6 million people are employed. The unemployment rate for men 25 years and over is 66.6%. The unemployment rate for women 25 years and over is 7%. So you say, well, how do we get up to 8.1%? Well, the sticky part is the youth unemployment rate. 15 to 24-year-olds, the unemployment rate is over 16%, which actually has come down, but it's still very, very high. And I'll talk about kind of why that is, why the youth unemployment rate is so high. So again, the overall unemployment rate for Canada, 8.1%. And across Canada, the provinces with the lowest unemployment rates are Saskatchewan and Quebec at 6.6%. And the province with the highest unemployment rate is Newfoundland and Labrador at just under 14%. Ontario's unemployment rate is 9%. The city with the highest unemployment rate across Canada is Belleville, Ontario at 12%. They look at 33 metropolitan areas across Canada. And the city with the lowest unemployment rate across Canada, Lethbridge, Alberta, and Sherbrooke, Quebec, they're tied at 4.9%. So there's really good pockets of unemployment that are even lower than where we were before the pandemic. Now, in terms of larger cities, Toronto is at 9.5%, so above the range or above the national average, and Vancouver is at 7.4% unemployment rate. So if you're just joining, I see people joining in. My name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm just going over a little bit about what's going on in the labor market right now. I'll spend the next 15 minutes or so talking about kind of what's going on overall, and then I'll spend 20 minutes talking about what you can do as a CPA firm to get the best talent, best candidates. So Canadian economists are really torn between what's going to happen in 2021 and beyond in terms of where jobs are. Initially, they were saying that 2021 could bring about rapid market changes and positive job creation, but that potential job growth is going to be really dependent on a successful vaccine rollout and a general feeling that the pandemic is coming to an end. Well, we know as of today in May that those vaccines are getting rolled out, but when will the real impact be felt? There's a economics professor at Concordia University who said churn and burn is expected, which is a rapid flow of old jobs lost and new jobs being created. So in other words, the unemployment rate may not change dramatically, but Canadians will be on the move from one opportunity to the next. Other assumptions or other predictors that they said was that the automotive industry would do well as people move out of the city and buy vehicles to get around, and growth in logistics jobs as companies strategize new ways of doing business. And then also mental and physical health services jobs would also come through. Now, you may have heard this, that we're in the midst of what's called a she session or a she recession. This is that the majority of jobs, about 60 to 65% of jobs that have been lost, have been female dominated. And it's not a real surprise because the industries that have been hardest hit during this pandemic are industries that are predominantly filled, jobs that are predominantly filled by females. Those include travel, tourism, retail, food services, and hospitality. So hence the name she session or she recession. Now, they've also had a lot of females have had to stay home, care for kids, family while schools are out, and so on. And predominantly the impact of the schools being closed has fallen harder on females, mothers, than males or fathers. Now, most of the jobs in general are coming back and have been about 60 to 65% jobs. Now, if you may remember, 2008, 2009, the credit crisis, it was primarily a male or a he session situation. 60 to 65% of jobs that were lost back then were male dominated industries, including manufacturing. So if you caught Rachel at the top, she talked about the K-shaped recovery. And in my very fancy K here on a massive Post-it note, you have certain industries that have done very well during this economic situation with the pandemic. You can think of companies and organizations like Zoom or Amazon, Netflix, organizations like that, tech heavy, that really were benefiting from the pandemic. And these other industries that have been hardest hit, and these are vulnerable workers, hourly workers, part-time workers, students, youth, as I mentioned, in industries that are part-time, hourly paid employees, travel, tourism, hospitality, retail, etc. So what's the latest is that the bottom part of the K, they say, look, it's not a K-shaped recovery at all. Yes, this part is good, but this is not a recovery. This is a destruction of these industries, and who knows how long it's going to take before they come back. But that's what's called the K-shaped recovery. And young people whose jobs are often first to be axed in a downturn are also really overrepresented in the bottom half of that K. Now, I talked about how 5.1 million Canadians are working from home right now across Canada. Well, at the height of the shutdown last April, just over 40% of people worked at least half their usual hours at home. And as the year went on, this percentage fell to about 25%, then went up to about 29%. But overall, these are significant numbers, and everybody knows that structurally there's changes in terms of who is working from home and how work is getting done. Now, I talked a little bit earlier about COVID-19 and impact on females. Well, research from LinkedIn found that female employees are being disproportionately more stressed than their male counterparts by work-related issues. In fact, 74% of women suffered from employment stress last month compared to only 57% of men. Now, these are big percentages, but it's been a heavier hit on the females. Now, one theory obviously for this could be linked to the notion that COVID-19 is more damaging to women's career aspects, which we saw in terms of the industries as well. Now, globally, the economy faces fears of a lost decade as COVID-19 cases surge. We have a situation where the Global Economic Prospects Report that was released by the World Bank thinks that there's going to be a long lingering impact from the virus, that it could be a lost decade, especially for countries that failed to get on top of the pandemic early. Luckily, even though it might not feel that way, Canada has done a pretty good job about getting on top of it, ordering vaccines and getting it rolled out as quickly as possible. It might not feel that way, of course, but the long-term damage to this is still obviously unclear, but it is going to impact and already has impacted jobs and careers and so on. So I'm going to turn now to my top 10 tips and best practices for recruiting and hiring if you're a CPA firm. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A and I'll answer them at the end as we go along here. But I wanted to share just some opening comments on what's happened and especially in the CPA firms. I've got some clients that are throwing in the towel, basically saying, look, like, we need help. We need some support. The pandemic has obviously changed the way the workload is being done. Give me people. I just need people. There's other firms that I speak with, partners that think that we're still in 10 years ago where there's like a significant demand of people that want to be in public accounting. Well, as you know, CPAs have choices. They can work in a lot of, whether it's industries, public accounting, or so on. So I think the firms and some of our clients that have been really jumping on to say, hey, look, Marc, send us candidates, even if we're not looking, even if we don't tell you that we're looking, keep an eye out for us because we know it's hard to find people when we really want them. So it is very competitive right now to find staff for public accounting firms. Some of the people who might be your target person, they're not always that out there in terms of searching for jobs and actively sending out their resumes and so on. So it's a little bit harder to get hold of them, especially when they're at work or at home. Now, I thought before the pandemic, things were busy in public accounting, but we are actually busier now with orders from public accounting firms than we ever have. And I'm not just saying that because this is what I do, but this is what I do. And it is amazing and it's very competitive. It used to be that come January, firms would just kind of say, call us in July, like we're going with the team that we have. But there's been a lot of movement, even during busy season, of people, tax deadlines, work, and so on. Last year, you had the extended tax deadlines. This year, you didn't. But there's a lot of movement around. Things are a lot slower in terms of getting work done because people are working from home. But there's definitely a low supply and a high demand. Now, one major hook that we had as recruiters before the pandemic to get candidates is now gone. And if you think about it, that is finding jobs for people closer to home. We don't have that. A lot of people are working from home already. So the hook that we had to say, hey, we've got a firm that's closer to you, closer to your home, your commuting time will be less, is now gone. In addition, paying more dollars doesn't necessarily mean as much as it did before the pandemic because people are saving more and they can't spend it anyways. So they're like, I don't know, it doesn't matter to me as much. Like, I can't spend it. I can't go away. I can't take more vacation time. So you have to be more creative in recruiting. And this has really changed during my career. It's been a long time that I've been in the recruiting industry, not just for industry positions, but public accounting, where public accounting firms wouldn't ever think of using a recruiting firm for finding staff years ago. But now it's like, what choice do we have? Posting it doesn't really work. Trying to reach out to their network doesn't really work. Working with other CPA firms doesn't work because they're also looking for staff as well. So tip number one in my tips, and I think Rachel will be posting it, and you can also check out my LinkedIn contact information in the chat as well. But tip number one, learning to be more adaptable. It's really important for your firm to be able to adapt during this time period. You have to look at your current business model, how work is being done, and the firms that are really innovative, they're really thinking forward. They're thinking, okay, how can I get this work done? What does it look like? Are there options other than the way we've been doing it? I've walked into many firms and they have a non-paperless office, they have files, they have rooms, they have piles of paper and so on. Well, in today's area, in today's market, younger public accounting staff, they don't want to walk into that kind of environment. So think about how you might want to change, how you want to change your current business models. But firms are now accommodating the employee in how the work gets done. And that could translate into hours, time off, what time period, what their commitments are, what their requirements are. We all know, and I'll talk about this shortly, but we all know that mental health has been a real challenge. We have one client who has said, look, we would rather you work 4 days a week and we'll find someone else to fill that extra day rather than burn you out in the 5 days. So really taking a proactive stance and saying, what can we do to help you along? Promoting within, restructuring the work. You want to have a mindset of we need and want this, and if someone wants a job, you have to move away from a mindset of we need this and it's all about us. And if somebody really wants the job enough, they're going to come to work with us. And that mindset doesn't work right now. That is going to turn off prospective job seekers, prospective good candidates for your role. So that's number one, learn to be more adaptable. Number two, being more open to remote work. Now, obviously, everybody has a different viewpoint on this. I work with some firms that everybody's back to work. I have some firms that everybody's working from home, and some that are a hybrid. Well, we have found, generally speaking, that it's about a third, a third, a third. A third of people are working at home all the time. A third are working from an office all the time. And this is not just any industry, but specifically public accounting. And then a third are having some kind of hybrid. So 2 days in the office, 3 days at home 1 week, and then 3 days in the office and 2 days at home the following week, something like that. So being more open to remote work. What happens if your employees continued working full time once the pandemic finishes? Is that what's going to work for you? Is that going to help maintain your staff? Is that going to continue to help people stay and aid and help in retention? Because there are, on the flip side, when I'm speaking with candidates, there's definitely a good number of people that do not want to go back to an office for whatever reason. Maybe they've got comfortable working from home. Maybe they feel they're more productive. Maybe they don't like the commutes anymore, whatever it is. So you're going to have to be not only adaptable, as I said, number one, but be open to remote work. And if you're still feeling hesitant about that, would you be okay with staff working part-time? So really creating an in-depth, concrete communication plan with remote employees going forward is really, really important. And also keep in mind that those who apply to openings at your firm are already asking more and more about remote working options. And add that to your job descriptions to save you time. And the more flexible you are, as I said in number one, the more adaptable you are, the better it's going to be, the bigger the net that you're going to have, and the more number of candidates that are going to apply to you. Number three. And I want to add one more thing about being open to remote work. I mentioned earlier about the areas that are the metropolitan areas that are having high unemployment rates. If you can create some kind of process where you can hire remotely, and you know that those cities, those other metropolitan areas, and if you're interested in knowing, getting that, feel free to message me. But you can also just look it up on Labor Force Survey, April 2021. You can see all the different metropolitan areas. What I would suggest is going after those people in those areas and those towns that have higher unemployment rates. You'll get a better response, you'll get a bigger pool. The firms also that are less inclined to say, well, we need somebody who's close to the office, are going to do better in this kind of world, because we don't know what's on the back end of this. We don't know what's on the flip side. Those 5.1 million Canadians that are working from home may want to continue to work from home and may be discouraged to coming back to your workplace if you force them to come back. So lots of interesting changes that are happening. Number 3, and I touched on this already, but improving employee mental health and wellness. This means providing more tools and resources for staff on how to improve their well-being, and encouraging employees to take mental health days, helping members of your firm communicate more about their concerns, looking at your EAP, employee assistance programs as well. What does it entail? What does it provide? So if you have programs that are available through your group benefits plan or health and medical or whatever you have, make sure to communicate that with your employees and remind them of the programs that are available. It's a serious issue right now. We all know that, especially from people working from home, social isolation, not being able to have that human contact and so on. And it's okay to talk about it. So make sure to talk about it, let people know what those plans are, and just ask them, how are things going? It's not even just a question of your existing employees, but also for new employees, let them know about the programs that you have for mental health. They'll appreciate it. Number 4, and Rachel is posting them here in the chat as well, if you're missing anything. Number 4, creating better employee engagement. So how are you maintaining engagement among your staff, especially for those who live alone? You have Zoom calls. People have Zoom fatigue. We know that. That's a common term now that didn't exist a year ago. Zoom fatigue is a real issue. Give people a break from being on the computers all the time. Schedule casual Zoom meetings with your employees, or encourage staff to reach out to one another. Have mentors, connect 2 employees together if you have to. But have people check in on each other. Perhaps the partner checks in with the manager checks in with staff, managers check in with each other, whatever the case may be. But also during the recruiting process, talk about what programs are available. Really important to just communicate and let them know what the expectations are for being there, being accessible, when meetings can happen or will happen, what the expectations are for them to be on their computer, and so on. Now, I've also noticed that there are more and more softwares that are coming out that can track what people are doing on their computers. And this is for company-owned or firm-owned computers. This is a real sensitive topic, because some people really don't like the invasion of privacy, even though it's a computer that you have from work, and but they're on it at home. So really be careful of that. I know there were a lot of softwares that came out. People may not be as keen about that. I think you got to measure productivity output by deliverables, whatever it is, whether completion of tax returns, files, hours, and so on. Number 5 is updating your company perks. Your employees' needs are changing, especially if they're working from home. For example, you can review your company's benefit package to ensure it has more mental health and wellness options for when your staff is feeling burnt out. Including something like this will also go beyond our current pandemic situation and will boost productivity and morale in the company and your firm. During the pandemic, some firms and organizations in general have changed the benefit plan. They've provided things like credits for employees to purchase new desks or chairs, for example, $200, or reimbursing their internet. So think about your current benefit plan, talk to your benefit plan provider, and think about what perks you're paying for that are not being used. Think about what may be added that your employees may want. And there may be benefits that your firm is paying for that are not being used, and those funds can be redeployed to other perks as well. So definitely keep that in mind. Talk to your group health and benefits provider. Maybe it's the time to change to a health spending account as opposed to a group benefits plan. If you're not sure what a health spending account is, have a look. There's PHSP, private health savings plans, or private health savings plans. Have a look at that. It gives employees more flexibility in terms of how they can spend the benefit dollars. It might actually save you some money as well, because you're just paying as you go. Number 6, and if you're just joining, my name is Marc Belaiche, president of TorontoJobs.ca. I'm running through my top list of things that you can do to improve your recruiting if you're at a CPA firm. Number 6, train your line managers on interviewing virtually and practice. It's one thing to have your line managers interview with you in the room or close by or whatever the case may be, but it's another thing when they don't know how to interview candidates by video. And I have seen so many disasters of managers, senior managers, and partners speaking with candidates, doing interviews, just not professional at all. It could be the Zoom, it could be the lighting, it could be the camera angle, it could be what's in the background. Really, really, really take the time to think about what the model is and what it looks like. There's lots of virtual backgrounds. You can put your company logo on there, work with your marketing person perhaps to get that a virtual background that looks good for you with your company's logo, for example, your firm's logo. Maybe use the opportunity as well to show them the office if you're doing a Zoom interview as well. Walk around with your computer, show them the office, show them what it looks like. These are the advantages. These are things that will differentiate your firm from other firms as well. So practice with your, not only for yourself, but practice with your managers, senior managers, anybody who's doing the interview. Give them direction. I've seen just a ton of poor interviews being done by line managers right now, and it sends a really, really bad message to the candidate. Either you're not prepared, you didn't take the time to really think about what it is. Some candidates are worried about their own camera angles and so on and so forth, but you're presenting yourself. Maybe you want to have a virtual background, whatever. So usual tips that you would follow yourself: good lighting, no kids screaming in the background, make sure you're on time for the interview, start it earlier if you have to, and so on and so on. So just really, really practice. Number 7. Now, I touched on this already, but looking at across Canada or around the world for employees, working remotely might be the new direction that we're going. Nobody knows. Nobody really knows what's going to happen after this is said and done. I really feel that there's going to be a big portion of people who are not going to want to return to work, to an office. They are comfortable working at home. They don't see a reason why they should be coming to the office. Or maybe if they do come to the office, it's perhaps once a week, talk to people, build some rapport and culture and so on. So working remotely might be the new thing on an ongoing basis. But the reality is right now it's here. There's no clear direction as to what the work environment will look like in the future. There's lots of questions and not a lot of answers as to whether an employer can force somebody to take a vaccine, if they can force them to show a negative COVID test, if they can force them to come back to an office. So you have to kind of be a little bit under the assumption that people are going to want to stay at home, or a good percentage of those, but no one can clearly say what it's going to be like. I think the Ministry of Labor in Ontario is being fairly quiet about giving any kind of regulations as to what is required. They're probably working on something, but so far there's nothing out there. But with people being close to an office being less of an issue, look beyond geographic constraints. I talked about looking at those centers that are higher employment. Go to areas where those are. You're going to have more leverage. You probably don't have to pay as much because the cost of living is not as great as, say, in Toronto. And you should always obviously look at the government programs available. You're all financial people, so you probably know all about the wage subsidy, hiring of students, training grants. There's a lot of programs out there that you can use. Number 8, spelling out expectations for being available and not being available. Now, I talked earlier about that you want to set some parameters around Zoom and how long and so on. So let people know during the interview process what the expectations are for how many Zoom meetings there are, what their days look like. But definitely try to cap it, allow for breaks. And while before the pandemic, people were looking for work-life balance, meaning they didn't want to be at the office for 60, 70 hours a week. Now it's a different kind of work-life balance. It's working at home, but it's a work-life balance at home. So just be aware of that, be understanding of that as well as you go along. Number 9, job seekers are more in tune with health and safety right now. So you got to think of what is your firm doing for health and safety. There are job seekers who want to know, what safeguards do you have? Do I have to go see clients? Can I work in an office? What happens if we're trying to share a screen? Do you have Zoom where we can share the screen? We have one firm that they are big enough, they have enough space that people have their own offices and they're very spread out. So there's no issue with COVID and so on, but people want to know that. So make sure to address that during the interview process. And I'm always, put it on the job description, put it right on there. Say, we are following extensive health and safety standards, because they're going to want to know. Tell them what you're doing. So do you have safeguards? Are there sanitizing stations? Is there plexiglass between employees and anyone else? Sick days as well. Obviously, it's a hot issue right now where people are afraid of calling in sick because they feel they might lose their job or they might not get paid. So just be aware as to what that might be. Communicate it. What's your policy? Make sure people know and understand that. Number 10, making everything more visual. Now, this is what's going on right now. Is we are living in a digital world. We're living in a visual world. We're living in a world where everything has to be immediate. So use videos. You can create something very, very simple. It doesn't have to be an expensive, elaborate video production. Use it in your job descriptions. Have a link to say, here are some job descriptions, or here's our job description, and click here to view a short video about who we are. You can connect it to your website. You can connect it to perhaps a page on your site or on YouTube if you have a YouTube channel. Very easy to do. And you can also use LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram to find people as well. Snapchat, depends on really what type of jobs you're looking for. So you might not put a CFO role on Snapchat, for example, but if you're using LinkedIn, make it visual. Add a visual, add a video, talk about your firm, talk about what it's like working there, have other people in there. And if you're not sure how to do it, if you're not sure how to edit a video, find somebody who does within your firm. It's not very difficult. If I can do it, anybody can do it, trust me. So also having a social media strategy to finding staff. What is your methodology to use your social media to find staff, and using hashtags? There's a whole industry, there's a whole segment of using hashtags and tweets and what the lingo should say and what visuals you should have associated with it, attaching video to make it more visual. But the point being is that having a social media strategy is really, really great. So keep dripping it. If you're looking for staff every 2-3 weeks or once a month, have a posting going out there to say, we are hiring, and link it to your page or link it to an email address or whatever the case may be. And I always say that one of the biggest failures by recruiters, and I'm talking about recruiters in organizations, and I'm sure it's the same with firms, is they don't tap into the opportunity to use the marketing tools, marketing methodologies that the marketing department is building over here to promote that you're looking for staff. So that's the challenge, is you've got all these people over here on the marketing side, and if you have a marketing person or whatever at your firm who are thinking, how do I get more clients? How does the firm get more clients? And you've got people over here, partners or recruiters or whatever the case may be, an office manager who's trying to look for staff, and they're not talking to each other. So connect the two and use your social media, all your marketing, all your newsletters, anything that you're doing to reach out to let people know that you're hiring for people. Great way of finding candidates as well. So in conclusion, it is now about 3:45 Eastern time. I want to thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll have some questions here that we can cover off as well. If you have some questions, feel free to post them into the Q&A section as well. I'm sure you do have questions, because after these presentations, I always get people calling me or emailing me and say, I didn't want to bring it up at the event, so we'll use it confidentially if you want to ask a question. I didn't want to bring it up at the event, but I wanted to know this. So this is your time. Feel free to use this time to ask your questions. I want to thank you for your time. If you want to discuss your staffing needs for your firm, let me know. We're happy to have that conversation. We help firms across Canada with their staffing needs. Our recruitment team can help you. And we can also help your clients with their staffing needs as well. So if you have clients that are looking for a controller, accounting manager, HR, sales, admin, whatever it is, we can certainly help. We provide temporary, permanent, and contract type staffing as well. So you're welcome to help us. You're welcome to use us for whatever the needs are. And Rachel has put in my information here as well in the chat. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. My work phone number is there. My email address is there, and my cell phone number is there as well. And I just want to thank you again for your time. We'll take some Q&A here. And thanks, Rachel, for coming back on. And yeah, hopefully we can see you at one of the future virtual events as well.
Wow. That was a lot of information, very condensed. That was great. So yeah, like Marc mentioned, we're going to take some questions. If anyone has any questions, just at the bottom in the Q&A box there. We have someone asking what was tip number 7. So I think it's just on the side here, but that one was, I think, look across Canada, Marc, I think, or around the world for employees.
Yeah, look across Canada. And I just wanted to touch a little bit more on that. I mean, we have one client who outsources their work internationally. And if you are interested in that kind of setup, I can connect you with that person who can provide that, information and give you some rates and stuff like that. It's probably a great time to look at that. In the recruiting world, we have, oh my God, I'm forgetting the term, but I can't remember. Anyways, there's an outsourced recruiter. Excuse me. There's an outsourced recruiter, and same kind of thing, same kind of concept as, outsourcing it. But yeah, if you're interested in me connecting with you, or me connecting you with somebody who can provide you with connections overseas, I'm happy to do that. And yeah, just look across Canada, look around the world. Like, this is a very connected world right now we live in, and a great opportunity for people to use that opportunity, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with everything being virtual, it just makes everything so much easier. But it's like we went, warp speed. Everything was kind of starting to be video, and people were starting to do, virtual interviews and things like that. And it just kind of, took a life of its own, and we were forced to learn how to do it, even if we didn't want to learn how to do it, right?
It was amazing, right, Rachel? Like how the world just changed on a dime. And before the pandemic hit, you had to pull strings in some cases to get people to work, or to allow people to work from home. People wanted to work from home, but then it was like, why should I give you that benefit? I never got that benefit. Or if I let you work from home, others will want to work from home. And then, what's going to be left of the office? And then boom, around March 15th, 2020, the world just turned on a dime where everybody was asked to work from home, regardless of whether you were set up to work from home or not. And that brings up another point, is that there's still a lot of people working from home, even after a year, that don't have the right desk. They're working on couches, they're working on their beds, on kitchen tables and so on. So you got to really be aware of that too, for your staff, and make sure that they have the tools and comfort to allow that. And we say, and not many people take us up on it either in our office, but look, we have everybody working from home now as well, but we say, look, if you ever want a break, if you ever want to go into the office, you're welcome to go in the office, even if it's for a half a day, just to have a change of pace.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes people do get a little stir crazy being I stare at the same walls, and then there's nobody here to talk to. So sometimes it's just nice to get out for a 20-minute walk, or I don't know if you brought it up, but your 20 rule.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, really works, right?
Well, why don't you share it? Do you remember what it is?
No. It's 20 seconds. You have to focus no, you're going to do it better than me. So,
all right. So 20 rule. So every 20 minutes, you should look for at least 20 seconds at something that's 20 feet away.
There you go.
Right?
I would have done it right, but I didn't. I don't know. I didn't want to mess it up.
That's good, right? Is it really...
Yeah, I know it works. I've been doing it, and it works for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so we have a couple more questions. So someone wants to know what CPA firms might be doing wrong in their hiring process. We talked a lot about the things that they should be doing, but what mistakes might they be making that they could correct?
Yeah, that's a good one. I'd say probably the biggest one is thinking old school and not understanding what um, what maybe younger staff are looking at, especially for older partners. And they think that, well, I never got that, or too bad, so sad. This is the way we want you to work, and like the world has changed, and people aren't the same, and people's expectations aren't the same. So, really thinking old school, thinking that, hey, I got to be in the office, so you're going to be in the office, and all our office, everybody's in the office, and that's not going to work in this time period. It may work in 6 months from now, or a year from now, or whenever this pandemic rolls out, and you have new staff coming in. It may work, but right now, if you don't adapt, you're gonna not get selected. And I say that in a positive way. You are not going to get selected as the place that people want to work at. And I told you, it's high demand, low supply for people in public accounting. So you have to be adaptable. Paper files are old school. Go paperless. Some firms have really adapted to that technology. Other firms are still old school, but really adapt to that. And also compensation wise, I get calls fairly regularly, at least 1 or 2 times a week saying, hey, Mark, this is what we're paying people. Is this right? Does this sound about right? Are we in the right range? So some people say, well, this is what the last person was earning. This new person should be the same. Well, that doesn't always cut it that way. And you got to realize that the market is changing every single day.
Absolutely, really good points. We have a couple more questions that came in. So what is the current retention level you are seeing as far as intermediate level staff?
So I'm assuming that's coming from a firm saying, or intermediate level staff staying in the role. Is that the
Yeah,
right?
it was a two-part question. I was going to ask them the next one separately, but maybe it makes sense if I do it together. So what is the current retention level you're seeing as far as intermediate level staff? And then what are some tips to retain staff for more than a year or two, was the second part of the question.
Oh, I see. Okay. So in terms of the current level, retention level, intermediate staff hasn't really moved around very much. And whether that is because, hey, the grass isn't greener somewhere else, like why am I moving? What would be the reasons for wanting me to move to another firm? There aren't a lot of good reasons why they'd want to move to another firm. Like the reasons that are coming in right now are not money. They're not their manager. Sometimes it's just a change. Sometimes they want to go from a smaller firm to a bigger firm, smaller to medium to larger, to just get different kind of experience. But there's not a lot of reasons why an intermediate staff accountant may want to move in this day and age. Now, in terms of how to retain staff for more than a year or two, I'm always like, what can we do better? What are you learning? What do you like about your job? What don't you like? What can we fix? And for the things that your staff don't want to do, maybe there's somebody else that does want to do that, whether it's within the firm that you can restructure or create that as a job posting as well. But really asking them what they like. You and I, Rachel, we worked together for a long time. Like my favorite recruiting question, whether it's interviewing somebody or whether it's somebody who's working with us, is on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the perfect job, what would you give this job? And you might not always get a perfect like the right answer or an honest answer. Maybe it's if it's an 8, maybe they might say it's a 9. If it's a 9, they might say a 10. If it's a 7, they might say it's a 9. But asking them those questions, what can we do to make it better for you? Is it the work? Is it something you want to do? Have a real openness to allow people to come to you to say, look, would you mind if I did a little bit more of this? I wanted to do more files along this. I wanted to do more audits rather than reviews. I wanted to do more reviews rather than notice to readers. Just really opening it up that way. So communication, I think, probably is the biggest way to retain staff.
Yeah, I was going to add to that, probably approaching your staff before they have a chance to say to you that they dislike something or they're going to leave. It's that open communication that you make sure you mark it in your calendar as a leader to have those conversations with your staff, whether it's monthly, quarterly, semi-monthly. Just asking questions sometimes can really help you understand where people's minds are at. And if you're not connected to your employees and you're not communicating and it's strictly just about the work all the time, they might feel a little bit neglected, or they might feel like they could be, taken care of or have a better relationship somewhere else. So, like you mentioned, communication, but taking it a step farther and actually having a communication plan of how you're going to communicate with your employees and how often and how you're going to make them feel important in your organization. I mean, at the end of the day, when you take a step back, they're devoting basically most of their waking hours to your organization. So it's really important to make sure that, they're okay. And like I said, having a communication plan with your employees is really important.
Yeah, I just want to add that, when I was I did my articling from 88 to 92, 1988 to 1999, not even 2000s, right? 1900s. We didn't know any different, that you worked for the firm and whatever time period you had your life around the workplace. So when you were finished your work, then you could go out. So you can really plan. And for those of you watching that are older, like in my age, mid 50s, you know what I'm talking about. That's changed. That world has changed, and people aren't, into that kind of thing anymore. So communicate, really talk to them about what the expectations are and when workloads are tougher and when they can take breaks and holidays and vacation.
Yeah, sometimes just giving a little bit, like 1 or 2 hours, take a break. I noticed you've been working hard. Those things go a long way. So, but you got to plan it out and make sure you're doing it regularly, just so that you have that openness. For sure. So we have a few minutes left. I know you touched on compensation a little bit, but we have someone asking, like, how do I find out more information about what I should be paying my staff in terms of compensation? So I know you said people reach out to you and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but do you have any more advice on coming up with compensation plans for employees?
Yeah, talking to recruiters is good. They have a good pulse on what's happening. Constantly interviewing, talking to people, even if they're not what you're looking for, just interviewing just to get an idea as to what their compensation plans are. And not just saying, what are you earning, but what's your total package? What's your benefit plan? Do you get a bonus? Do you get any kind of profit sharing? Do you get anything extra? How much vacation do you get? Do you get hour for hour for any overtime that you work? Some firms give overtime for anybody that works overtime between January and April. They allow people to take that off in August when it's less busy, of course. So, really talking to them about not current staff necessarily, because you know what their comp plan is, but talking to other people outside. And it's very hard because somebody watching could be in Winnipeg and somebody could be in Quebec City or Halifax or Toronto or whatever. So there's going to be variations within the industries as well. But sometimes partners, like when I tell them what they're making, what a candidate's making, they think maybe I'm making it up or something. But firms are that are overpaying, of high retention. And think of how much it would cost for you to find a replacement, the cost, the training, and so on. So lots to think about there.
Absolutely. No, all great advice. So we have about 1 minute left, and I just want to say thank you. So first to Marc for preparing all that information. It's a lot of data and a lot of information, a lot of studying. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do that, for sure. We appreciate all of you for being here today. Thanks for being interactive and asking questions. We really appreciate it. It helps engage in the conversation. I've included a lot of links. So just as a reminder, all of our upcoming events. So we have our virtual tax conference on May 28th. We have our virtual CPA PD Day on June 9th. We have our CPA Firm Partners Conference on June 15th. We have our Canadian Virtual Controllers Conference on June 22nd. And as I mentioned, for some of you that may have not been there during the opening, they are very interactive. They're much more than a Zoom webinar. We have networking opportunities where you can network live with other attendees. We have sessions, so multiple speakers that we bring in industry leaders, and they talk about a variety of different topics. And then we also have a panel. So we bring in a lot of experts or, other firm partners to talk about their strategies and advice for, what's going on in their current organization and talk about the economy. It's always very interesting to hear how companies have been pivoting nowadays. That's the big word of most organizations right now, and a lot of organizations are pivoting on a daily basis because it's just a lot to keep up with. So really engaging and interesting conversation. I've also included Marc's contact information, so if you have any staffing needs or you want more information about anything in the industry, he's very well knowledged, as you can see. So definitely reach out to Marc. He also wrote a book. I don't know if I think you mentioned it maybe, but you know, Tales from the Recruiter, which is you wrote it about 5 years ago, I guess now.
Yeah,
5 years ago. But walks you through obviously just what it says, Tales from the Recruiter. So from a recruiter's perspective, you know, real life examples of different scenarios. So Marc wrote that, big accomplishment. We've got all our tips here in the chat that we went through today, all the links to our social media, which we post updates about events and webinars and things that we're hosting. So always a great idea to follow us there. And then I just included a link about our recruitment services. So if you want more information about those services, that's in there as well. So just wanted to say thank you very much. This will be recorded, so we'll upload it to our YouTube channel. So Marc, I don't know if you want to just include the link to our YouTube channel there. So if you want to watch it back and you know, have a copy of it, you can definitely do that through YouTube. So thanks so much again, everyone, for being here. We really appreciate it. We do these regularly. I don't know when the next date is for the next one that we're doing, but we'll send a follow-up with some information if you're interested in attending the next one. So thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Marc, I don't know if I missed anything or if you want to.
No, I'm just putting it to all the in the chat, the link to our TorontoJobs.ca YouTube channel. There's a lot of great videos on there, and we also have our Toronto Recruiters Conference channel as well. So I'm just going to post that in here very quickly and see if anybody's interested in checking out some of those videos really fast here before we sign off here. So I'm going to just put that in here right now. If you are checking out, there's lots of videos on great videos on everything to do with the hiring, recruitment, diversity, inclusion. We didn't talk about that as well, but lots to cover. And if you check out our YouTube channel, you'll see all those videos as well. So thanks again for organizing everything, Rachel. That's great.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much for being here, and enjoy the nice weather this afternoon.
Absolutely. You too.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.